So it's come to this, a butterfly girl. Well, actually, that's probably a really good thing, because butterfly fairies are one of the core female aspirational fictional characters. They're right up there with mermaids of all shapes and colors and princesses of all shapes and colors. Those tend to be the three things that, well, little girls gravitate to. So the butterfly princess, well, while there are in the world of fantasy, lots and lots of different types of fairies. Anyone who's been keeping up with Pixie Hollow can tell you that, and they, different powers and outfits that correlate with that. The butterfly fairy tends to be the most renowned. Part of this is because it was used to fool Sir Arthur Conan Doyle into thinking fairies actually existed. No, go ahead and Google that. The guy who created Sherlock Holmes fell for one of the biggest hoaxes in the world. But besides that, whether you're a young girl, a young boy, hey, boys can like butterfly fairies too, but if you're like anything like I know I am and have a little girl at home, well, one who's slowly becoming a teenager, I can tell you that when she was younger, dressing up as a butterfly fairy was absolutely one of her favorite activities. And this is not something that really stops when you're adult. Again, boys can do this too, but let's be serious here. Most of the people who are dressing up in butterfly outfits with wings are females. I'm not getting into anything political. I'm talking about life facts and being a father and a parent. Now, of course, like I said, this doesn't necessarily have to end when you are an adult. There are plenty of fairy princess butterfly costumes to buy when you are older, but it is a motif that is extremely popular with the young girl demographic. Now, even though Masters of the Universe Classic was mostly sold to men, 95% of it, we wanted to include all of the Princess of Power figures, and they tended to represent very core female aspirational motifs and concepts, from fairies to ice witches to bees and peacocks and, well, characters that could turn into cats. Speaking of which, Flutterina was also used as a dog character in the puppy line that Mattel used. It's part of that whole let's share copyrights so they don't expire and so we don't have to repay for them. That's not the YouTube video we're talking about today. That's for another time. We're talking about this Flutterina, the one from the Princess of Power line from 1985 through 1987, updated into Masters of the Universe Classics by the talents of the Four Horsemen and Bill Beneke. So, how did we get to this? Well, the idea was to get to all of the MOTU and POP figures from the vintage era. We knew New Adventures was a little wonky and didn't have as many fans, but we were hoping there were enough that could support this. It turned out the Princess of Power figures actually sold a lot poorer than Masters of the Universe, but we were really determined to go back to the roots and really try to create one world where all of the She-Ra characters and the He-Man characters could live together. So, Flutterina, being one of the core, well, maybe not core is the right word, but at least she was prominent in the vintage line. And what I mean by core is, well, I mean, she obviously did appear on the animated series, but she wasn't kind of part of that traditional lineup, the one you saw at the beginning of every episode. She was sort of more of a second or third tier Princess of Power character, Glimmer and Angelina being right up there, Catcher being the number one enemy, and, Flutterina was there. She appeared, she had appearances in the content, but she was definitely a lower tier than some of the other, even secondary characters. So she doesn't show up in as much fan art or as many montage shots. Still very important to get out there, and again, I think the Horsemen knocked it out of the park, even though the wings do remind me very much of cupcake toppings, which is actually a good thing, because I love cupcakes. So the original Flutterina had wings that could flap with a little mechanism on the back. Obviously, we weren't going to be able to replicate action features in the Classics line, so we had to really just more go about transforming a character that was a doll, because of the rooted hair and the included brush, into an action figure, just like we did with all the other Princess of Power figures. The idea was to release them what they might have looked like had they been released in Masters of the Universe back in the 80s, as opposed to Princess of Power, which meant you were still taking a lot of the doll elements, but turning them more action figure-y, meaning no rooted hair, instead you had sculpted hair, and no mechanism to make the wings flap, just wings that popped into the back, which of course were too big to actually pack on her in the package. Because, yeah, she had a pretty big wingspan, coming up with a signature shield, coming with, not up, her shield, her sword. You had a warrior butterfly princess, which is pretty cool. The wing simply plugged into two holes on the back, which meant we did have to retool a torso, but that was fine because it's a needed part, and we could then use that for other characters that needed plug-ins to the back part. And that simply allowed her to have a huge wingspan, kind of like Peekaboo, who also had one of the records of sort of largest silhouette of any of the Princess of Power figures. And it made a really cool display on the shelf when you can have something like that. There was a lot of talk also about doing multiple repaints of the Princess of Power figures, perhaps their doll look, some of the early concept art. Once we had the tools, it seemed like something we should be able to do, and Flutterina, like many of the other characters, did have multiple decos that exist in pop culture, so there would have been an opportunity to repaint her down the line. Unfortunately, as I said, the Princess of Power figures just did not sell as well, and I mean the day of sales. Obviously, the subscriptions were locked in. So, whether you're a young girl, a young boy, an older boy, or, something in between, who knows? Well, whoa, that sounded totally wrong, but I think you know what I'm talking about. No, maybe you don't. The point is, whoever you are, you can love Princess of Power. It doesn't matter. I loved She-Ra way more than He-Man when I was a kid. It was by far a superior show. And getting to do all of the POP figures really was a dream come true. Her real name, by the way, is named after my sister, Abby, because my sister Abby had this figure. She didn't have all of them, and it was a fond memory of me stealing from her and drafting Flutterina into my He-Man army, much as I did with her extra She-Ra.